This is Jonathan Agger here for Pro Boxing Fans, joined by Dan Rafael. As we're coming to the end of the year, just talk to us about some of your highlights from the year in terms of fights, emerging talent. What stood out for you?
Well, I mean, when you take a look at the top fights, I mean, there's a few. I mean, it was obviously a big deal when Charlo became undisputed against Castano in their rematch. That was a terrific fight. Um, they weren't maybe the greatest fights ever, but it was great to see Tyson Fury fight twice, which by normal standards that's a good year if you've got one of your biggest stars in fights where, again, speak whatever you want about the merit of the sword fight. There was a big crowd there for that fight, 65,000 or so in London for that one. And then you go back to the April fight with Dillian White, and they got the ability to even extend the capacity even more than it had been at Wembley and get 94,000. So that was a big deal. Look, you had the upset of Dimitri Bivol defeating Canelo Alvarez was a very big deal. I had the good fortune to be in that, in Vegas for that fight and cover that. But then we got the Triple G fight that a lot of people wanted to see. I guess I can't call that a highlight because it didn't live up to the lofty expectations after their two great first and second fight. So that was a disappointment. But the continued emergence of Bivol is a highlight because he put together a victory the way he did against Canelo. You come back and you score, a one-sided ass kicking against Zurdo Ramirez in a pretty big fight. To me, that puts him in the driver's seat for Fighter of the Year honors in my mind with those two big wins for Bivol. So I think that has to be a highlight. We saw the emergence of like a Sebastian Fundora, for example, had a great fight against Erickson Lubin that will be a contender on many people's lists when we get around to putting all that together in terms of what the fight of the year is. All that said, though, being totally honest, I actually thought that in large measure, 2022 was kind of a shitty year for boxing. There was a lot of disappointment. We didn't get a lot of the biggest fights that we wanted to see. That doesn't take anything away from some of the great fights that we did get. But, we were promised a lot, and we didn't get as much as we were promised. We didn't get Crawford and Spence. We didn't get Tyson Fury against Anthony Joshua. And I could go on and on. And the other disappointing thing about the year is that so many of the best fighters that we as fans want to see. I understand that in the modern game, 2 fights in a year is like normal. Like I said about Tyson Fury, Canelo had the 2 fights. On rare occasion, maybe somebody might get in 3 fights. But there's so many great fighters and champions and top contenders and such, even prospects, who had 1 fight or no fights. I mean, the list is ridiculous of how many guys were limited. Some were of their own volition. Maybe there were some that were injury related, but most of them were not. Like, I can't even, we can go down the list. You had Deontay Wilder, 1 fight. Andy Ruiz, 1 fight. Anthony Joshua, 1 fight. Alexander Usyk, 1 fight. David Benavides, 1 fight. Caleb Plant, 1 fight. I mean, on and on and on. You had a lot of guys who were quality, and I'm missing other names because I'm not looking at a list or anything like that, who just did not have the activity level. And that, how can you become a star and move the fans and get people excited when you perform once in the year? It's extremely disappointing. And so from that perspective, it was not a great year for boxing.
Yeah, well, like you say, Crawford's first fight of the year is this Saturday, would you believe?
Right. And by the way, Errol Spence will have had 1 fight this year, another one of the top fighters in boxing. I mean, go down whatever your perceived pound for pound list is. I'll bet you most of those guys only had 1 fight. It's disappointing. I mean, some guys got in 2 fights, whether it was like Estrada and Gonzalez each got in 2 fights. I mentioned Tyson Fury got in 2, even though they weren't maybe the perfect ideal matchups. The White fight was obviously excellent on paper. Chisora is a different story. But if you just go down weight class by weight class, you won't find so many fighters. And even when they did have a fight, it wasn't against like the top guy. It's one thing if you have 1 fight and you're fighting like a mega fight. And then what happens is the guys, Danny Garcia's another guy, 1 fight. I mean, Keith Thurman, 1 fight. I mean, the list goes on and on. Then they want to come back. Well, I've been off for 12 months. I've been off for 14 months. I've been off for 16 months. I need a tune-up. What are you talking about? You needed a tune-up. If you're only fighting once a year, you shouldn't get a tune-up, right? You tell me you want to fight 3-4 times a year, you want to take a soft touch, tune-up, whatever, no problem with that. But if you're only fighting once or maybe twice, they should both or one be like legitimate fights. So, it's disappointing. I was glad like a Ryan Garcia, who had been inactive mainly due to injury and his own mental health issues that he was very public about. He got in 2 fights this year. That was a good thing. I think Tank Davis just got the 1 fight in also when he fought Rolly Romero. So these are all off the top of my head. Like, these are all like top name fighters who just had 1 bout. You cannot sustain a sport at the highest level and keep fan interest if you're only going to have your best fighters fight once a year. It's very disappointing. And it's not just, it's not one company. It's a lot of the promotion companies. And again, I'm not blaming the promoter necessarily. I'm just saying it's not like it's just, only Matchroom boxers fight once a year or whatever the case may be. You can find them in Top Rank, Matchroom, Golden Boy, PBC. By the way, another one, Virgil Ortiz, one of the top young fighters in the sport. 1 fight, inexcusable.
Well, on that note, Dan, we'll leave it there. Appreciate you jumping on. Probably the last one we'll do this year. So enjoy your Christmas, New Year, and hopefully we'll start off the year with some big fights.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.